Welcome back to the Gary Sutton Show on WSBA. We're very fortunate this morning. You know, we are in a budget crisis right now. I don't know if you've been aware of it, but we're in, the 113th day that we don't have a budget. And that's affecting a lot of people. And one of the groups that's being affected adversely right now in the state, if you talk to different people out there, is the shale group, natural gas, Marcellus Shale. And with us this morning is David Spigelmyer, who's the president of the Marcellus Shale Coalition. He's here in studio. He's around the area going into meetings and running back toward Pittsburgh after this. So he's a busy guy right now, but we welcome David to the show. David, good morning to you.
Yeah, good morning, Gary. Great to be with you.
David, you know, I want to get an update today on kind of the natural gas industry, where it stands right now in Pennsylvania, because, you know, we hear people say all the time, we're in the middle of a revolution. We're sitting on all of this kind of wealth in the country in terms of natural gas, in terms of shale and so forth. And yet we look at Pennsylvania. We see a state that seems to want to tax itself to death. We kind of feed on ourselves with taxes, and a lot of people are saying it's not a great time right now for Marcellus Shale here in Pennsylvania, at least. What are you seeing out there?
Well, I think, Gary, it's fair to say it's a good and bad story. First of all, we're entering winter of 2015-16 with natural gas prices half of what they were just 7 years ago. Yeah. So from a consumer standpoint, that's a wonderful thing. And it also provides an enormous opportunity for manufacturing growth in Pennsylvania. Mm-hmm. I think it's fair to say that we've written Pennsylvania's manufactured obituary for the last 3 decades, and now we've got the opportunity through affordable and abundant natural gas to regrow manufacturing jobs across the Commonwealth. So that's a very good story.
Right.
Problem today is we're a bit of a victim of our own success. We've gone from producing about 180 billion cubic feet of natural gas, or 25% of Pennsylvania's annual demand, to producing 4.3 trillion cubic feet of natural gas in Pennsylvania. Basically a little over 20% of America's natural gas demand is now coming out of the Commonwealth. And as a result, our pipeline infrastructure has not kept pace. Discounts to get gas into the interstate pipeline systems, and I say discount from the NYMEX or New York Mercantile Exchange price, and natural gas is deep. We have the deepest discounts of any basin in the United States, so the average selling price for gas, the primary 3 interconnect points of the Commonwealth, is $1.05 today, minus gathering costs of 50 or 60 cents, and pay post-production costs and the impact tax that Pennsylvania put in place in 2012. And we're selling gas as operators anywhere from 50 to 70 cents all across Pennsylvania. And that's not a formula that's going to suggest that we have folks that are going to invest here long term. In fact, we've had nearly every major operator have laid staff off. The supply chain folks, many of them in this community here, have laid off folks and have their costs or their billings cut short. So I find it kind of ironic that at a time when industry's down and they're trying to foster growth in natural gas development, that we've singled this industry out for not a tax, but an additional tax. The impact tax that was put in place in 2012 is indeed a tax. It's generated $853 million in the last 3 years, all across Pennsylvania, helping all 67 counties. About $1.6 million invested in York County, and that's a great opportunity to invest in projects all across this county. It's a tax that has benefited the entire Commonwealth, and one that's in place. I don't think it's fair at this point with all the taxes that Pennsylvania has in place already that our operators pay every day. We're a business in the Commonwealth. We're subject to all the high-end taxes that Pennsylvania has. To single this industry out at a time when it's down, to impose another high-end tax upon this industry. And make no mistake, the tax that has been offered by the governor would make Pennsylvania one of the highest taxed states in the nation, not just on its face, but the 4.7 cent rider, which is the West Virginia model, makes Pennsylvania's approach the highest tax shale state in the United States.
We're talking with Dave Spigelmyer, president of the Marcellus Shale Coalition. Dave, you know, what's really interesting to me is when they pass this impact fee, all of a sudden, if you don't say tax, then it's not a tax for a lot of politicians out there. I'm sure you kind of smiled as I do. But they seem to want to call it everything but a tax, and yet if money's going out of your pocket to be paid in somewhere else, that's a tax. I said you can call it a duck if you want to, but it doesn't matter. Citizens feel much the same way, feel very put upon. We heard the governor during the campaign, we've heard him a lot since, saying, well, a severance tax, we're the only state in the union that doesn't pay a severance tax at the pump. And yet, when one looks a little closer at other states in the union, they also don't pay the array of taxes that you already pay right now as Marcellus Shale or as any kind of natural gas producing energy group here in Pennsylvania. And we have the 10th highest corporate tax in the country. It's certainly not necessarily a very business-friendly place.
I think we're actually tied for number one at 9.99%.
Sorry about that. Number one.
Corporate net income tax. And make no mistake, Gary,
I was being kind to them there.
We are the only state in the nation that has an impact tax.
Right.
Some would say, well, that's covering the damage they do to roads. And I would just say that's contraire. Our industry invests in roads prior to our use, and we repair our roads when we're done. This industry has invested over $1 billion in roads in the last several years to, as I said, to prepare roads for our use, repair roads when they're done, and to rebuild our infrastructure where we use highways. On top of that, I think you're well aware that last year Pennsylvania passed a transportation infrastructure bill that made our gasoline and motor fuel taxes one of the highest in the nation. We're probably, as an industry, one of the largest contributors to motor fuel taxation of any industry across the Commonwealth. With the growth of this industry, the job growth that we've had, there have been extraordinary contributions made to that area as well as the investments our operators have made in the areas where they're developing natural gas across the Commonwealth.
How fast are Marcellus Shale companies exiting the state right now?
I think it's fair to say that we've had a couple shift their investments outside of Pennsylvania. Right. Nearly every operator has reduced staff, has reduced rig count. We've gone from rig count in January, February of 2012 of nearing 125, 130 rigs active in Pennsylvania to just over 30 today.
Wow.
So we've had significant decline when governor's staff makes a statement, well, they're not going anywhere. We have great rock in Pennsylvania. Well, they're right. We have great rock in Pennsylvania, but our operators have already gone elsewhere. There are other competitive shale plays, about a dozen of them in the U.S., where folks can invest, as well as shale plays now that exist across the globe, where major energy companies, I would use Chevron, Exxon, Royal Dutch Shell as examples, they can spend their capital elsewhere. We need to make sure we're a highly competitive state to attract capital, to grow jobs, to create opportunities for supply chain, and make Pennsylvania a winner long-term, especially in manufacturing.
If you listen to certain people out there, they will say, and people generally we find well on the left will say, well, you're out there destroying the streams, you're destroying the farms, you don't really care about that. You think we have open holes of oil and things sitting around. No one cares about the environment. Tell us a little bit about some of the things you've had to do with regard to preventative kind of things with the environment and other things as well.
I would tell you there's no industry in Pennsylvania that's under the microscope like Pennsylvania's Marcellus industry. We began this coalition back in late 2007, early 2008, with a focus of tightening Pennsylvania's rules and upgrading or modernizing Pennsylvania's regulatory framework for oil and gas development. Average natural gas well in 2007 permit was $100. Today it's $5,000. A pay-as-you-go system to invest in DEP to grow staff. And although the agency, DEP, has had to cut staff over time, they've not had to cut staff on the oil and gas front. They've gone from average of 60 in the compliance and inspection arena to over 200. We've added a new oil and gas oversight group out of Williamsport, and staff have been added across the Commonwealth. Again, as a pay-as-you-go system as well, a $6 million carve-out of the impact fee has gone to continue to fund DEP as well. Again, this industry is not trying to circumvent environmental rules. We've worked to modernize, upgrade, and to make sure that we don't squander the very investments our operators are making by not having rigor to our rules in Pennsylvania. So we've worked hard to make sure there are inspectors in place, that our well sites do get visited by the DEP. And this is I just looked the other day, there are 69 different regulatory rules that apply to shale gas development, hydraulic fracturing, the development of pipelines. We're highly regulated, and we welcome regulation as long as it's common sense. There are some new regulations that are being considered that provide little to no environmental benefit, that are very costly. That's where we get engaged in the debate. I would tell you that a shale tax, a singled-out tax like a shale tax right now, will drive additional investment from Pennsylvania. And the area, one of the things that you asked the question about environmental shortcuts that we would potentially take. I look around our board table, nearly every one of our member of our board of directors is a Pennsylvanian. We like to hike and bike and hunt and fish and camp and do the same things that other Pennsylvanians like to do. The last thing we want to do is leave scars upon this land. We want to make sure it gets done correctly, make sure it gets done right, and we leave a positive legacy and one that includes jobs for our kids.
Well, and you have to live here in the communities, too. And if you're putting damage down the communities, you're not exactly going to have the welcome sign hanging out either. I want to come back, Dave, and talk a little bit more about, this whole budget impasse right now and what eventually could come out of that for the shale industry. Also, look ahead to, is this drop going to continue, or where would the turn come about, the turn of the tide? We'll ask Dave Spigelmyer that question. He's the president of the Marcellus Shale Coalition, and he's right here in studio on the Gary Sutton Show. It's News Radio 910 WSBA. Welcome back to the Gary Sutton Show on WSBA. Dave Spigelmyer here this morning, the president of the Marcellus Shale Coalition. Dave, I guess I want to ask, where's the turning point going to be for this? Obviously, we're looking right now at a budget impasse. It's in its 113th day overdue. Republicans don't seem to be budging on the severance tax, at least outside. Maybe you have more information on the inside on that. And the governor continues to not budge either and continuing to want that and then take that supposedly and put it into education. We all saw during the campaign, they sitting in the classroom with the little kids and saying, all this stuff underneath you here, and we want to make this work for everybody. And it was like telling the story. Made me wretch, but your thoughts about that?
No, first of all, I think it's fair to say that it has far more to do with other projects than it does funding education. I think when you really dig into the proposals, you found that the proposal was to take a $675 million bond issue to fund wind and solar projects and to use $55 million of severance tax money on natural gas to pay the debt service of that over 30 years. I think that's very short-sighted. It's picking winners and losers, and one that I resist. To put students in a classroom, young students in a classroom, to say this industry isn't paying their fair share is nothing short of ludicrous from my perspective. Mm-hmm. We pay all the same taxes, as I said before, that every other business of the Commonwealth pays, plus a separate tax that no other state has called an impact tax that's generated $853 million over the last 3 years that have gone to all 67 counties.
Let me jump in on you there. Can you give people an idea of just how much your group or your industry pays in taxes here in Pennsylvania right now? I've heard the number before, and it's pretty much astronomical.
$2.1 billion in the last 3.5 years in the Commonwealth, and that's not only our operators directly, but our supply chain. Induced tax impact in the state has been $2.1 billion, plus the $853 million that have been paid in this. We said it's the only state that doesn't have a severance tax. Well, it's the only state that has an impact tax that, as I said before, has generated $853 million spread out over all 67 counties of the Commonwealth. And fortunately, it's a lot of folks say, well, that's just being spent in counties where shale is being produced. That's just not accurate.
Right.
York County has received over $1.5 million for great projects that are being developed here in the county as a result of the shale tax.
Can you give an example of one of those kinds of projects that's being developed here in the county?
Yeah, there's actually a memorial park that's had some work done on it recently. I think it's Locks Memorial Park. Mm-hmm. There's some work being done. Restoration of the Stewardship Borough Fairgrounds, the Dillsburg Community Park. Those are 3 projects. Just the restoration of the Stewartstown Borough Fairgrounds as well as the Dillsburg Community Park has had $223,000 or $224,000 invested in those 2 projects alone from the shale industry. So that's been positive. I mean, those are benefits to communities that don't come out of the taxpayers' pockets, that this industry has been successful in providing a benefit. I would tell you the big benefit, though, is, as I said, I think before, is the opportunity. What's going to come of this industry and what fixes things longer term. I think it's growing demand and it's rebuilding manufacturing in Pennsylvania. A lot of folks say, well, natural gas. I heat my home, I cook my food, I dry my clothes, heat my hot water. But it's every consumer product that we touch today is manufactured through the use of natural gas. All steel products, glass, plastics, chemicals, fertilizers, which come from natural gas, pharmaceutical medications that sustain life, powdered metal products that are in just about every little part that we touch. Today, nearly 1 in 3 electrons is produced through natural gas. Tomorrow, I believe it's fair to say that we'll have far more of our transportation fleets running on natural gas. And the upside is extraordinary there. It's a domestic product. It's a long-term product that's far more affordable. It's helped us reduce our dependence on foreign oil. And the fact that we're producing oil in shale development has reduced our dependence on foreign oil from over 60% just in 2008 to less than 40% today. That story is one that needs to be told long and hard because we send young men and women overseas every day to protect the free flow supply of oil into this country. That has been a winner and shouldn't be understated.
20 seconds left. Obviously, you're watching what's happening with the budget right now.
Yes, sir.
How big is that? How big is the outcome of that? 20 seconds.
It's enormous. It's enormous because we want to be able to invest money here, to grow jobs here and opportunities here. If we don't get that equation right, it will cost us deeply in the area of jobs and opportunity for Pennsylvanians.
And despite what politicians say, they don't grow the jobs. It's still private enterprise out there. It's still capitalism. It's still people out there investing their money, taking risks. And obviously, when you invest that money and take risks, you're going to go to the place that is most business friendly. Dave, it's been an honor having you in this morning. Thanks so much for taking the time, and appreciate the specifics and especially how it's helping right here in the York County area. Dave Spigelmyer, the president of the Marcellus Shale Coalition. Where can people go for more information on that?
Yeah, www.marcellusshalecoalition.org.
Okay, marcellusshalecoalition.org. Check it out. Dave, thanks so much for being with us today.